and welcome to the Westminster Institute. I'm Robert Riley, its director. Today, we're particularly delighted to welcome to the program an old friend of mine and one of the great experts on the Middle East, and particularly on the subject that we're going to be addressing today, the Emirate of Qatar. Yigal Carmon is the president of MEMRI, the Middle East Media Research Institute, which he founded back in 1998. I am a long-serving member of the board of MEMRI. Yigal combines 4 different areas of expertise: intelligence, counterterrorism, diplomacy, and research. He is a colonel retired in the Israel Defense Force Intelligence Corps. He was counterterrorism advisor to 2 Israeli prime ministers. He participated in the 1991-1992 peace talks in Madrid and Washington as deputy head of the Israeli delegation negotiating with Syria. As I mentioned, he founded MEMRI in 1998, which bridges language gap between the Middle East and the West by monitoring, translating, and analyzing the media of the Arab and Muslim world in Arabic, Farsi, Turkish, Urdu, and Pashto. As often the case, as any observer of the Middle East will know, what is said in English in the Middle East is often not what is said in Arabic. And MEMRI and Yigal Carmon make sure that we hear what the Arabic version says. MEMRI recently launched a new project to bridge the language gap between the West and Russia by monitoring, translating, analyzing Russian media as well. Under Mr. Carmon's leadership, MEMRI is serving the needs of media, academia, legislatures, and governments, and its research is particularly sought out by intelligence agencies in Europe and North America. Today, Yigal and I are going to be discussing Qatar, whether this emirate in the Middle East is what it seems, an honest broker for Western powers, and specifically the United States, with terrorist groups that seize American citizens or those from other Western countries to obtain their release. Qatar has been particularly active since October 7th and the Hamas kidnapping of all of those Israeli, American, and other citizens. I want to read one thing about Yigal and Al Jazeera, which is the TV network that Qatar started quite some years ago. And this is from someone in California. MEMRI's Yigal Carmon, who has been the leading expert in alerting the world to Qatar's complicity as the puppet master for Islamist terrorism, and along with the Iranian regime, the biggest obstacle to peace in the region, has exposed in detail just how Qatar's Al Jazeera has consistently acted as a propaganda organ for Hamas and other jihadi terrorist groups. Yigal, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Bob.
Qatar is so successful in presenting the face of the honest broker and intermediary for the United States and Western powers with various terrorist groups, that the United States has designated it a non-NATO ally, this being done in the latter years of the Biden administration. Now, how can Qatar be all those good things and at the same time the abettor of terrorism, which you claim it to be?
Thank you for giving me a chance to explain this tragic situation. But if I may, Bob, just one word. Our board is made of many of advisors, of director of many former heads of American intelligence agencies, and that has to do with our program today. We were joined by General Frank McKenzie, who was the latest commander of CENTCOM. We moved from Arabic, Farsi, Urdu, Pashto, Turkish to Russian, but then also to Chinese 6 years ago, because there is a need to bridge the language gap also from these countries, Russia and China. And we monitor whatever hurts the American security and safety, because they also, what they say in Russian or in Chinese is not what their spokesmen say in English to the American public. So to come back to Qatar and Jazeera, how did this monster come into being? I want to go back to the time, the early 90s, when the Soviet Union collapsed. And the situation became such that, as Charles Krauthammer described it, a unipolar moment, that America won over this empire of evil, the Soviet Union. And it was America's moment and the Western civilization's moment. Unfortunately, this lasted only 10 years. Two countries rose up to challenge that. Russia couldn't, they were destroyed. China wasn't even beginning to rise. Who came out to challenge and to create another pole, anti-American pole? The two countries were Iran and Qatar. Iran with its ideology, straight confrontation with America in the name of Islamism, of those ayatollahs and their leadership. And Qatar did it in a deceptive way through its money, basically, and began pouring money into the West to deceive them and to take over universities, institutions, economic enterprises, what have you, intelligence, military industry, and so on. We are going to publish soon what they bought from Boeing that produces some F-16 planes. It's mind-boggling, just mind-boggling. Number of planes that they don't have enough people to deal with them. They go somewhere to other countries, enemies to America. To go back, this is what Qatar does in the world. It is in nature Wahhabi state, and they say it. We published that. We published the speech of the Emir of Qatar in 2010 when he inaugurated the main mosque in Qatar, the Mosque of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, and he explained our mission in life is to promote Wahhabism in the spirit of modern times. Namely, you don't need to wear, I don't know what, and drive a camel into. You can wear Prada like his mother does and own Valentino and preach for Hamas and for jihad and for others. This is in the spirit of modern time. They supported the Taliban for many years, all the way to the bloody takeover of the country of Afghanistan from the hands of the democratically elected secular leadership that was there. And then they pretended to be helpful to America. They take the people, but they caused it all. They did it all. And the leadership of the Taliban were in Qatar, in Doha, the capital. The same story they did with Hamas. So what do they say? America is the one who asks us to keep lines of communications. Now I'm asking this question. Did they keep lines of communications? No. They brought in the leadership of the headquarters of the terrorists into Doha and saying, that's America that asks us to keep. This is not keeping lines of communication. This is handling the Islamist leadership of this organization, the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, wherever you look in the Muslim world, wherever there is a battle in any country between the Islamists on the one hand and the secular, and I'm not relating now that the secularists are mostly, like in the Muslim world, dictators, but so are, of course, the Islamists. Wherever there is a battle, Qatar is on the side of the Islamists. Take Sudan, Egypt, of course, Libya, Tunisia, where you go. They even paid money to, I published that, to Islamist militias in northern Mali. Everywhere they pour money. They turned over the regime in Egypt until Sisi took it back from the president of the Muslim Brotherhood, Muhammad Morsi. He was removed in a coup. They are, of course, aligned with Turkey, which is another Islamist state, but also with Iran. And that's the main thing. And they serve as the money bag for Iran. Iran is so much constrained by many sanctions. So they have Iraq on the one hand, which they basically occupied, though not officially. And they have Qatar that allows them to act, that gives them money. They share the biggest gas field in the world, maybe South Pars. And they develop it, they share it with Iran, they develop it for the benefit of both of them. If Iran had to pay for the development, they wouldn't have the money. Qatar does it for them so they can break the sanctions and sell like there are no American sanctions. This is what Qatar is doing. Today, like few moments before we spoke, I see in Syria, a jihadist took over the power from another dictator, Assad. Okay. And who stands by this jihadist, Julani? Qatar. And Jazeera describes the situation and tells all kinds of lies and fabrications about how good they are. They are killing all their opponents. They are doing horrible things. Jazeera is doing for them the PR, like they do the PR for Hamas and for the Muslim Brotherhood. But there is opposition in Syria, and I'm not saying the opposition is good. Both sides are bad. But Qatar and Jazeera are for the Islamist ones. And they talk about what happened today as if there is a decent regime, a decent government there, and there are some members of the old guard, of the old government, that behave horribly and they killed, both sides killed, but Qatar is on the side of the Islamists, anywhere and everywhere, the Islamists. Many perceive Qatar as, a little country, a lot of gas. They want to secure themselves. They want to have to survive. No, it is a mission of Wahhabism. It's not a little country. A little country that wants to survive is the Emirates, and they chose a different path, a path of interreligious understanding. In Abu Dhabi, they have the Abrahamic compound. There is a church, there is a mosque, there is a synagogue. They try to promote interreligious understanding. In Qatar, they have the Mosque of Ibn Abdul Wahhab. There are some churches that look like 2 or 3 that look like deserted from anyone, but no interreligious understanding. They support the jihadists. Simple. Now, Jazeera, back to Jazeera. The previous government, of Biden, the DOJ ordered Jazeera to register, according to the FARA laws, as a foreign agent, because they are owned by the government of Qatar. And they couldn't care less. A year, 2 years ago it was, and they just ignore it. So what? Who cares about the American government? So they say, we don't register. And worse than that, we published AP also published it, that they dared to hire an ex-CIA official, former, a retired one, Kevin Choker is his name, to spy on American legislators, Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Tom Cotton, Representative Mario Diaz-Balart, and former Representative Ed Royce. Why? Because they promoted a legislation against the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, how dares a country to contract a CIA or former official to spy on its legislators? This is a crime they should be punished for in a way that I can't even imagine. But no, nothing is done. I understand that President Trump has 1 million urgent issues to deal with. This is not the most urgent one, but symbolically it is. Symbolically, it's something to be taken care of immediately. No one can hire anyone to spy on American legislator, isn't that?
No, I just want to mention quickly, Yigal, that it appears from some background pieces about President Trump that he has no illusions about Qatar, that he understands the situation. Is that correct?
Well, I read books, and we published that. I read books written about 2017. In 2017, 4 countries in the Middle East, all allies of America, all, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Bahrain holds the biggest Navy base since 45, and Egypt declared a boycott on Qatar. And they said, why? Because they are promoting terrorist organizations, and they are allies of Iran. And the president realized that he was on the side of America, obviously, on the side of those countries. But then what happened? I read it in Jared Kushner's book. He managed to somehow save Qatar in exchange for a commitment which was never respected, never honored, never nothing, and the boycott was over. Now, there is a point that I need to explain, Bob. America has the biggest base in the Middle East, in Qatar, in Doha, Al Udeid base. It's a front base for CENTCOM. Qatar gave it as a present to America in 96, very early on. Why? When the father of the present Emir did the coup against his own father, many Arab countries were against that and were boycotting him. So what did he do? He needed some protection. Whom did he find? America. The Americans, they don't understand anything. Here, take a base, you have it. They paid for it, all of it. Even later, they pay all the time. They pay everything that America does there. Why? Is it a favor to America? No, it's a favor to themselves. America is doing a favor to them. Without the American base there, Qatar will be off existence in a week because they are endangering all other Arab countries who look for westernization, look for reform, for openness. And Qatar hit them with Islamism of the 7th century. And they don't want to get rid of it. But America protects them. America supports them. America is holding them alive. They could be gone long ago with all their support of terrorism. It's a tragedy.
If I may ask you
Yeah.
a question, because I've read this in Memory's literature about Qatar, what you just said, were the American base not there or were it removed, Qatar's existence would not last more than a matter of weeks. Well, who exactly is it amongst their neighbors who would do this?
Saudi Arabia and the Emirates will take it over. They don't need to take over. It's a ruling family. if America stopped supporting this dictatorial ruling family, if a new regime will rise up, there are families there which this ruling family is repressing, is putting in jail. There is no freedom. This Jazeera talks about democracy all over the world. No news about Qatar. No news about Qatar, except that the emir gave a speech here, the emir gave a speech there. They dared to cancel elections that were a fraud to begin with. But anyway, they canceled it. And he said, our people are not ready for it. Are not ready for it. Okay.
Could you describe in a little more detail, Yigal, the nature of the Qatari regime?
Yeah. So basically, they are a Wahhabi regime. Wahhabism being the most extremist movement in Islam from the 18th century. Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab wanted to unite the world of Islam and to spread it again like in the 7th, 8th century. This was the goal. But now they do it in the spirit of modern days, as he said in his speech. Namely, no camels to ride into the deserts. There is money that does the job of invading the West and taking over sports, culture, economy, what have you, everything. Parliaments, they bribe people. They bribed Prince Charles, that is now the king. He was caught with the suitcases of money, 3 million pounds. And then he explained that this is not for him. No, it is for the charity institution that is heading. Bob, you tell me, since when is charitable money given in bags to a person? At the end, it's so shameful that the British closed it somehow. It was moved to, had he not been caught, it would go to his home, where it would go. But it was caught, so they closed it. It went to the charity that he's heading and everything good. Shame. The deputy head of the European Parliament, a lady from Greece, Eva Kaili, the Brussels police found in her home millions of euros in dollars, and she was in jail. She was removed from her position in the European Parliament, and she is awaiting a trial. This is what Qatar is doing everywhere, in every country, in every place, buying loyalties, buying people, buying institutions. The universities in America, 4.7 billion, B with a B, $1 billion to universities. And then we see what they do. It goes to students groups, to charity, God knows to whom it goes. And then you see it rising anti-Americanism, anti-Semitism, but mainly anti-Americanism, support for Hamas, support for the new slogan that they describe as a moral one, from the river to the sea. President Trump came with an idea, it can be challenged in many ways, to move them all, transfer them to a better place where they will have life. One can question that on many bases. However, no one talks about what Hamas wants to do, a transfer of all the Jews. I mean, those who remain the massacre to other places. That is not to discuss. Only what Trump said with good intentions, whatever. It may not be practical, it may have moral problems here, but it's all one-sided. That is horrible, right? But to do transfer to the Jews who remained the massacre, that is okay. That is fine. No word about that, no condemnation, nothing. This is Qatar. This is all Qatar. At some point, you said Trump knows. I read it in books that he said to the Emir of Qatar in an angry way, stop it. But then he lost the elections. And the Emir found President Biden, and he didn't stop anything. So President Trump knows. What is he waiting for? I don't know. But it will come. The clash between America and Qatar is inevitable. Inevitable. So I understand President Trump has, God help him, he has so much on his head. He probably thinks this is not the most urgent thing on my agenda. I think it's urgent because Qatar is far more than the little problem of the Middle East. No, it is the little problem of the world, the entire world. It's a worldwide problem. But he will learn it. He will learn it soon. Now, what happened with the hostages? He kind of threatened them. Release the hostages. It's sick. It's insane. You cannot do this. By the way, a word about hostages. This is something that shows the difference between the Arab world, those who do not westernize, who do not come forward and develop, but as it was, and the Western world with its values. The idea that you can take hostages and force the enemy to withdraw, to surrender, it's only by American and Western civilization's values. They found a strategic weapon against countries with Western norms and values. What happened lately in Italy? An Iranian terrorist, a government guy, was caught. He caused the death of 3 Americans. And America demanded the government of Italy to arrest him, and he was arrested. What do they, awaiting extradition? What do the Iranians? There was an Italian journalist in Iran. They kidnapped her, a young lady. She didn't know where she's going, what she's doing. And then they have something for exchange. And within a week, the Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, runs to Trump to beg him to cancel the extradition. And Trump, as a Western leader with Western values, agreed. And it was canceled. And then the Iranians immediately demanded the Italians to give him back. He's a government official, this terrorist. And the girl was released. This is now in Gaza. We have hundreds like this. This is what they did. They know this is a strategic weapon with the West. Take hostages and they will crumble down. Because in a democracy, of course, the president owes the people their protection. This is what the president is so proud of. This teacher, Vogel, in Russia that was taken for no cause, he released him. He's so proud of releasing the hostages from Gaza, some of them. And they came to thank him. God bless him. And now there is more to be used. And we see that the president, I wouldn't say surrenders, because these are his values, your values, my values. I wouldn't call it surrender. But there is a price to pay for that. If the enemy can use our values against us, then something is wrong with us. We have to figure out a solution to this. Otherwise, this strategic weapon will be used time and again. And what will the West do? surrender and surrender and surrender because his values don't allow to relinquish responsibility for its own citizens. No way. The president will have to deal with it. So he tried to threaten them. He issued a tweet, a very strong tweet. Guess what? They were not impressed. And now he's in trouble. So what do? He wants to be the president of peace, to tell Israel, okay, go, finish the job, as he threatened Hamas. He cannot do that. It was an empty threat, totally empty. He doesn't want to ignite war. The same thing I want to say regarding Iran. He keeps threatening, thinking that this will be enough, because in Western state of mind, it should be enough. They are not impressed, Bob. Neither Hamas nor the Iranians. You want to be the president of peace and all that? Okay, we don't care about your threats. You want to hit us? You will be the president of war, which he doesn't want. This brings us to another element of how to deal with Iran, with the Ayatollahs. We have a solution which does not involve military, which does not involve use of American troops and boots on the ground. Nothing of that. Iran is made up of 50% Parsis and other 50% almost other ethnicities. There are the Baluch, there are the Ahwazi, there are the Kurds, and there are the Azeri. These minorities, ethnic minorities, are struggling for their lives for years. They pay a heavy price. They don't want the rule of the Ayatollahs. If America helps them, even not with weapons, just with money, just with political support, the Iranian regime will collapse within months. Maybe that's too much even. And without one American soldier involved in anything, any of this. They fight for their own freedom. Help them. Not even with weapons. Help them with money. That's all. Let them struggle. And no need for American intervention in any type or form of anything of military, God forbid, nothing. And we, in memory, we have relations with the leaderships of these ethnic groups, and they are secular, Bob. There are some Islamists, but the bigger movements of rebellion are secular. They are not Islamists, and we are in touch with them, and we lend them memory to publish their constitution, to publish their statements, their speeches. But America doesn't do anything to help them. I hope once the president will find out that they are not impressed with his threats, now he said, very soon something will happen to Iran. I heard, I'm not sure it's true, but I heard that President Trump sent a letter to Khamenei. If this is true, then most of his advisors should resign in shame, because Khamenei calls America the great Satan. Khamenei wants America dead. We published a piece where they say we are going to kill Trump and everybody else that was involved with Soleimani. You send him a... What do you think? He objects. All papers are rife with information that Khamenei rejects talking to America. So you send him a letter? You know, again, we are, with our Western values, President Trump wants to try. He wants to try a peaceful approach. But in the eyes of the Iranians, they mock him. The regime, of course. The ethnic minorities want him to help them, but it's like a surrender. He says, death to America, and the President of America sends him a letter. Let's have a discussion. How would you interpret this, Bob? We would like the President to try a peaceful approach before he needs to use other means. But the peaceful approach is also a joke because they spit in his face. So what? Now, the negotiations with Hamas, they spit in his face. So the very negotiations are a surrender. The very negotiations are a shame. But, you know, when it will, I heard that there is a deadline tomorrow, Saturday, a deadline to become human. What is that? A deadline for becoming human. As Stephen Witkoff said, they have to be truthful with us, and they were, I don't know, really, had it not been a tragedy, it would be a joke, a bad joke, but a joke. You have until Saturday to become human beings. And what if not? If not, God knows. Mr. Witkoff, I wrote it I didn't know if you had the chance to read it. Mr. Witkoff owes to Qatar more than he owes to President Trump. They saved him from bankruptcy and God knows if not legal measures. They bought from him the Park Lane Hotel in New York, which lost and was a terrible thing for Mr. Witkoff. So there come the good people and buy it from him, not at the price of its real worth, no, at the price of the highest price, 623 million. So to whom does he owe? I don't think he owes President Trump. He owes the Qataris. But of course, he has to do what the president is telling him.
Yigal, let me ask you about, are there any internal vulnerabilities in Qatar? After all, there are only several 100,000 Qatari citizens, and the other several million.
There are all in all between 200,000 and 300,000. And then another 2.5 million foreigners, workers at different levels, from cleaning to business administrators. Now, from those 200,000, 300,000 that rule the world, there are families which this regime is oppressing. The royal family of Al Thani is oppressing the others. And yes, there are families that object to his rule, but he's repressing them. So what can he do? And what can they do? They don't have America to support them. They don't have, the ruling family did the big Mondial, won so much appraisal, many foreign workers died, but forget about them. Yeah, that's they managed to buy the FIFA vote for the Mondial. It's known there are trials, hundreds already, and not only indicted, but were found guilty. And there are still others. By the way, they tried to buy, they own Paris Saint-Germain, a soccer team in Paris, and they tried to have a vote in their favor for something. The board came against it, and there is now a big scandal in France about it, because the owner thought that he can do like he does in Qatar, repress the vote of other members. This is unheard of in the West, but this is what they do. They buy whoever they can in the West. In Paris, it became a scandal with this, but many other things were not a scandal. Many other things were covered and quieted. We published a letter from Qatar of money given by the Qatari ambassador in France at the time. He's the brother of the emir. At the time, he was ambassador of Qatar in France. Money to a French minister in charge of relations with the parliament. Le Guen is his name. We have the document, we showed it, it's all out. And this guy became ambassador in America later on. And now he is the ambassador in America. He did not do this crime in America, he did it in Paris. Bribing, it was in all the French media. It was in the media. And what, nothing helped. Nothing helped. He showed it was giving money to that minister for having a vote for visa waiver for Qataris. By the way, we published a report about the visa waiver for Qataris to America. And DOJ said we used the stringent measures of checking whether they deserve or not. So we wrote a piece about it. And I said, well, did you check this and this and this and this and this? No answer, of course. Mr. Mayorkas did the checking. It's a terrible joke. And now, what are the things that I mentioned? Number one, which should be heard all over America, Bob, I hope it goes. We wrote many reports about it. Who is responsible for 9/11? The mastermind of the attack was Khaled Sheikh Mohammed, a former Qatari government employee. He was an employee in Qatar from their government employee. From there, he did all kinds of terrorist attacks. And when the FBI came to arrest him, they told only the emir about that. And guess what happened? Within hours, he disappeared. Went to Pakistan, Afghanistan, only to surface 5 years later as the mastermind of 9/11. But not only 9/11, many other things to which he admitted, because the United States caught him later on, and he is now in Guantanamo, waiting for 10 years for his trial. I can tell you there will be no trial, I'm afraid, because in a trial, he would tell everything, and it will be incriminating for so many. Now, what I'm saying here is not from it's all American government documents, which we showed them all in the report. FBI, his own admission, FBI document. Lately, there was an attempt to do with him a plea bargain so that there will be no trial and nothing will come out. But there was an outrage in America, and this was Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense, had to cancel it, and now he's back in Guantanamo waiting his trial. And there should be no way to have a plea bargain. Reading the books about him, they tell the story of a spat between the FBI agent that came to arrest him and the American ambassador, who is now and for years an apologist for Qatar. And the FBI talked to him in a way that I cannot quote, but it's in the book. Basically telling him, how dare you let him go? because they knew that there was a plot there. This is the fear that when he talks, he will talk. He wants to defend his own life. He will tell everything. This was the cause for the plea bargain. Now, again, Bob, it's not memory information. It's all American government documents. Richard Clark, who was the advisor to two American presidents on countering terrorism, he tells this story in his book. How did Khalid Sheikh Mohammed escape? We published twice, once in the Washington Post and one is the New York Times, once in 2019 and one in 2023, a whole page ad, Qatar's responsibility for 9/11. Well, nothing happened. I hope this will be taken seriously by President Trump. If this is not true, this guy should be released or have the trial go. But just to wipe it off and have him there, and it's not justice also. Let's see. What's the veracity? What's the validity of all this information?
Yigal, let me ask you about the CENTCOM Air Base in Qatar. You've mentioned a number of times that were the United States to use the leverage that facility gives the United States, Qatar would fall into line very, very quickly, including the immediate release of American hostages.
Yeah, well, much of it is not really publicly known, but there is something clear about it, that they declared that they will not allow to use the base to attack any Arab Muslim country. So what is it for? For what is it? And if it's not to struggle with enemies of America in the Middle East, why should it be there at all? And they say, we do not allow that. So what's the meaning of it there? Occasionally, they brought their nuclear bombers. Well, you know, they can be taken hostage but easily. It's half an hour on the sea from Iran. I'm not sure they are still there, but there was a story of some not serious story. I said on Fox on one occasion to the people in the base there, beware, one day it will happen like in Gaza, that thousands of Taliban probably will swarm the base or swarm. There is a little city near the base for the families, like American city, all built by Qatar to give them good life. The contract with Qatar was renewed in I would say, the middle of the night, with no one knowing, with the Congress not knowing. And maybe it's the right of the government to do it without the Congress. But anyway, suddenly we are told that the contract was renewed for 10 years. If it's that innocent, why is it like in the middle of the night or what? Why isn't that discussed properly? Even if it's the government's right to do it without approval or without, it only shows you where we stand with this emirate of evil.
What can be done about the designation that the Biden administration gave Qatar as a major non-NATO ally of the United States, which apparently is an official status of some sort?
Yeah, and they are enemies of NATO and America. Enemies. How could they be made a non-NATO ally? How on earth? How? It is mind-boggling, Bob. It is mind-boggling. And the Biden administration that did it it should be, people should look at the justifications and see, there is an agreement of exchange of information. We wrote about it. And America, under the Biden administration, allowed them, under this exchange, to have free entry to information and vice versa. Okay, whatever America has to win for that, it's not serious. But it's on both sides. And they have a right to go into American information data, including, this will drive you really, it's a report that we quote the document, including political positions and sexual inclinations. Okay, now I know you are not too supportive of sexual whatever, but in Qatar, it's a death penalty, So America allows them to know, and since when does America have information on people's political positions and sexual? I never heard of it. Is this America that you know?
And why would they give it to Qatar?
Read the report and ask, I don't know why. That just happened just months before they were gone. That and the visa waiver. This has to be stopped immediately. This is compromising American freedoms and liberties. How can America, like it's England, with the same values or what, or to exchange information, but even there, I don't believe that there is an exchange about political positions. Who keeps in America record of political positions? In the intelligence, I mean, that's an exchange of intelligence. That's insane. I will send you the reports, the two reports about the visa waiver and about the mutual exchange of information. Mind-boggling.
Well, Yigal, you have a Qatar monitoring project at Memory.
Yes. So if you go into our website, www.memory.org, or just memory.org, you will see it immediately. It's right on top of the screen. The Qatar Monitoring Project. There is a big report that includes the whole story of Qatar, and then we begin a weekly. We are now by the 9th weekly. Next week will be the 10th, with all the crimes, with all the intelligence, with all the information, including 9/11. 9/11, has there been anything worse than that in America? And the perpetrator is not brought to trial. He is in Guantanamo. And he was a government employee of Qatar. How can one figure out a crime bigger than that? And they can be on a visa waiver, and they can be exchange of intelligence, and they can be non-NATO ally. The president knows who they are from his last tenure, and now he has to figure out how to deal with them. And I know Ukraine is first and China is second, and there are so many things this president has to deal with. I don't expect him to deal with it on the first half year, but it's too much. It begs to be done immediately. It will have an impact on other issues if he does it now and not later, because they are impacting the whole world, not just a little place in the Middle East. No, they are in America. They are in Afghanistan. They are in Europe. They are everywhere.
Yigal, I'm afraid we're out of time right now. Thank you for joining us, Yigal, the founder and president of the Middle East Media Research Institute. And I invite our audience to go to the website of the Westminster Institute, where you'll see the many other offerings we have of prestigious guests like Yigal. In fact, we have a former program with him from a few years back, and see the way in which our speakers have been addressing the subject of Ukraine, Russia, China, Japan, Taiwan. So thank you for joining us. I'm Robert Riley.